Moho asks me, to what extent do you think that personal taste and experience can have an influence on a person's perception of art, and how does that change the definition of what great art actually is? Well, there's a couple of questions there, Moho, and personal taste and experience can influence what a person thinks, but it has no real effect on the art, just on the experience. And these are two separate things, and these are things that a lot of people don't really understand. If I write a poem, or if I make a film, if I write a novel, if I perform a song, if I do a ballet dance, if I paint something, if I take a photograph, whatever the art form might be, that thing is in and of itself inviolate. What art is a communication of things. Art is more like a verb and not a noun. Therefore, your perception is unique to you. It is not what someone else can perceive. For example, if I were to describe a famous person like a Mark Twain, an Elvis Presley, a Marilyn Monroe, a John F. Kennedy, these people are pretty well known for who they were, what they looked like. I could describe them down to a T. But your Marilyn Monroe and my Marilyn Monroe, if it was described to me and I didn't know who Marilyn Monroe was, would probably look different if we could take a brain scan of what I was thinking of, what kind of woman I was thinking of. It's the same way in art. The art, though, the poem or the painting or whatever, is in and of itself. We all have slightly different perceptions. Someone can have a taste. People talk in art about aesthetics. Aesthetics, though, have nothing really to do with criticism unless you understand the limits of your own aesthetic taste. For example, let me bring back this to a more readily understandable thing. I'm male and I'm a heterosexual. Every heterosexual guy has known a girl, gone to school with, worked with, grew up with a girl on her block, met someone at a club that they thought was a plain Jane. But you somehow found yourself attracted to her for whatever reasons. Maybe it was chemicals, pheromones. Maybe it was just the way she smiled, the way she answered your questions, 5 minutes of talk, whatever. On the other hand, we've also known drop dead gorgeous females who were physically perfect, symmetrically perfect faces, bodies that were figure eights, Venus on a half shell kind of thing. But you got to know them, and yeah, you still might want to fuck them, but you don't want to wake up with them. And this is the difference in aesthetics: is you can enjoy good things, but you can also enjoy bad art. For example, Ed Wood, the famously bad director of science fiction and other bad films in the mid 20th century, is enjoyed because his films are funny, unintentionally so, but they are enjoyed. That does not make them good films. Technically, they're horrible films, but that does not make them a good, it doesn't prevent them from being a good, enjoyable experience. On the other hand, Ingmar Bergman is one of the great filmmakers out there, but I can't say I particularly like his films. If I had a choice, I'd rather have all of Bergman's films, even his lesser films, than Ed Wood's films if I had to go on a trip to another planet and be gone for a couple of years. By the same token, I do enjoy in Ed Wood's films generally more than Bergman's films, but I recognize the difference. The difference is the like and dislike axis and also the good and bad axis. These are wholly different things. Just as you can be attracted to an average looking or even maybe a slightly ugly girl, you can also be repulsed by a gorgeous girl. That's the one thing. You also ask, and how does that change the definition of what great art actually is? It, in fact, has no change on it. My perception doesn't change what the thing is. We do live in what's called the Einsteinian term, a relativistic universe, but that doesn't mean that everything is relative in the sense that Einstein meant it. Einstein just meant that things are relative to each other in terms of speed, the way they travel, and mass and whatnot. This does not mean that there is no objective thing. The theory of relativity has nothing to do with subjectivity on the whole. It just has to do with a very narrow, thin slice of what the universe is about. So great art is always great art. If Walt Whitman's great poems had not been published until last Friday, they'd still be as great. They wouldn't have had the influence. Walt Whitman is a bottleneck great artist in that he is someone who changed the way poetry was done after him. and he was sort of the culmination of all that came before him in poetry. It also spread out to literature. Without Whitman, many other artists were not writing about sex in the bold and free ways that he was. So Whitman is a bottleneck, and his greatness is great whether he's written, whether he was published today or 150 years ago or so, as he was. So that is the basic answer to your question, Moho.